class, you must be sitting because Shaykh Ninowy is going to start teaching at 10:30. So Shaykh Ninowy will be teaching from
أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون صدق الله العظيم.
Stand here most of the time, so why don't you bring me the board here? Yeah, tamam. There is no mic that you hold on to. The new students at Madina, raise your hands for this year. You're not new students, Shaykh. To lower your hand down. I said the new students. Fair, inshallah. طيب. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we're going to be studying together. So I hope you have this text first of all, right? You have the basic text and the other text. Does everybody have the text? In English and Arabic? Yes or no? Speak to me. Yes. Okay, because I need you to talk. So everyone's got the text. So we're going to go through the text, right? And the text is about Al-Aqeedah At-Tahawi. Obviously, we're studying the ilm of Tawheed or Al-Aqaid. And we're going to have to go through a couple of things first to understand what the ilm of Tawheed is or what the ilm of Aqeedah is and why are we starting it as the first basic science that we approach in our Islamic studies. The reason for that is because every deen, and obviously there's only one to us, has three components: aqaid, ahkam, akhlaq. The first component of a deen is aqaid. Aqaid is what? a plural of Aqeedah. Aqeedah means matters of belief. So, creed. The first component of faith is creed. What do we believe in? Who do we believe in? Ahkam is a plural of hukm. Hukm means what? Huh? Ruling. Rulings. Which we call fiqh, remember? Fiqh. And this is a question of how. Fiqh is a question of how. Which means what? First is pretty hot here. It's good as long as it doesn't turn into a sauna, otherwise we'll have to go to a different place for that. How is how to worship. Who is who to worship? Aqeedah is who do I worship? Creed is who do I worship? Fiqh or ahkam, how do I worship? There's difference between who and how. And Deen is all these three. The last is akhlaq. Akhlaq means what? What does akhlaq mean? Huh? Character. Let's say value system. Deen consists of three things. Aqaid, which means creed. Ahkam, which are set of rulings. Akhlaq, value system. That's basically what a deen is. It's very important to understand it this way, otherwise it becomes difficult.
Just going to put it in front here.
You do whatever you
So we can
right?
pick up some.
So now whenever you look at your deen or whenever you're considering what, or anybody who tells you, this is my religion, or this is another religion, or this is whatever it is, it's always these three things that you're looking at. You're looking at aqaid or creed. What do you all believe in? How do you all practice your faith? And then your value system. Everything is the same with everybody in the sense as far as these categories. Now, I'm going to go a little bit further here with aqaid, which is who. Oftentimes what we've been doing in the past few hundred years is micro-focus on this category only, second category, which is the category of ahkam, the rulings, the fiqh. And not just fiqh, we even go into subsets of fiqh to even more subsets of fiqh. We've been focusing on a one school basic fiqh. And fiqh means the rulings, which means what? A list of what to do and a list of what not to do. And we focus on that and we usually come and say, well, this is ilm. Our focus has been on a subset of the second. The focus on aqaid and akhlaq has been a lot less in the past few hundred years. Meaning the focus on this one and the focus on the value system. And that's why we've been able to produce people who can tell you what you should be doing and what you should not be doing to make your salah valid. What is to do, what is not to do. And that's what we call fiqh or ifta or mufti or whatever you want to call. Right? But we have been lacking a lot in issues of, in my view obviously, my estimation, issues of this compartment and also in the other compartment. I'm going to take you back, and the reason I put these things is because of the hadith of Jibreel. Today I'm going to have the first couple of hours at least, we're going to be going through intros, but this intro is very important for you, especially the students. You have to be tested on it and you have to do good on it. If you don't understand things now, you're going to have a hard time understanding them later. Because the ulum in Islamic studies are cumulative. You build one on the other, one on the other. It's, all right, so, and therefore you need to ask if you don't know, or if you have a problem understanding. Feel free just to raise your hand and ask. You remember the hadith of Jibreel? When Jibreel came to the Prophet ﷺ in the form of a man, and he sat in front of him and he asked him four questions. Three of them was, what is Islam? What is? So what I want you to think here is exactly the same. What is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? That's how you divide them all. Iman is a matter of faith, aqaid. Islam, a matter of ahkam. Because in Islam, what did the Prophet ﷺ say after the shahadatain? He says, you testify La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, then you do what? What are the five? Iqamatul salah, ita'ul zakah, Sawm Ramadan, Hajjul Bayt, right? So these are the rulings, right? How do I, Iman is what? An tu'mina billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rasulihi. This is what we're doing, aqaid, a creed, that you believe in Allah and His angels, in His books, in His messengers, and in the Day of Judgment, right? All right, and how do I practice these rulings? Well, you fast, you do pilgrimage, you give zakah, and you pray. Then he asked him, what is ihsan? And what did he tell him ihsan was? What? That you worship Allah as if you are seeing Him. If you're not seeing Him, He sees you. That's a value system, meaning what? You worship Him through your aqaid and through your ahkam as if you're seeing Him. So you believe in Him as if you're seeing Him, and you pray to Him in ahkam as if you're seeing Him. And you do zakah as if you're seeing Him. And you do siyam as if you're seeing Him. And you do hajj as if you're seeing Him. And you believe in His Rasul as if you're seeing Him. And you believe in the Day of Judgment as if you're seeing Him. Do we understand each other? All right, these things are very important, and these are foundation. All right. With this now, so we understand now then aqaid is creed, and it's a who versus a how. Who means what? Who do I worship? Who is worshipped? Aqeedah talks about who is worshipped. Ahkam talk about how do we worship? What makes my salah valid? What makes my siyam valid? What makes my zakah valid? What do I need to do to have wudu correctly? That's all ahkam or ruling. All right. Who is the question of who is Allah Ta'ala? Why is He worthy of worship? Why nothing else is worthy of worship but Him? How do I know Him? How do I be close to Him? What is permissible for me to believe about Him? What's not applicable to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala? What's not permissible? All these things are matters of aqeedah. Once you do aqeedah, you move to ahkam. Imam al-Ghazali has a nice saying. He says, لا تصح العبادة إلا بعد معرفة المعبود. Ibadah is not valid until you know who you worship. How to worship is not valid in a sense, in a complete sense, until you know who you're worshiping. If you don't know who you worship, your worshiping is just a matter of rituals. You just trying to do mechanics without knowing who you're worshiping. And guess what we're taught, or nowadays, like I said, for the past few hundred years, people are no longer taught the aqaid, nor the value system. They're left for society to absorb that from. They're taught usually how to worship, and everything else is left. And that creates lots of gaps, especially in times where you have lots of assault on matters of creed, so that people really don't know what they really believe in. All right, with that, and I put them in this sequence for a reason, because aqaid are more important. Al-Quran al-Kareem, Allah Ta'ala orders the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam by saying by telling him فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. فَاعْلَمْ means acquire knowledge of. Acquire knowledge of. Acquire knowledge of. Have ilm of. When we say fa'lam, there's ilm. Ilm means knowledge. Fa'lam, acquire knowledge of. La ilaha illallah. So la ilaha illallah here is not a statement that people say. Tell me. That's fine. طيب. We have to find solution. طيب. Very nice. Ilm means we acquire knowledge of. There's difference between, and that's why even in your salah, you don't say, in the tahiyyat, you say, أقول لا إله إلا الله أعلم أن لا إله إلا الله. You say ashhad, even higher level of knowledge. I bear witness. I am a witness that there is no God but Allah. You're not saying I say, I claim, I proclaim, I think, I know. You actually go beyond just knowing. You go to the level of testimony. I testify, I witness that there is no God but Allah. And how do you testify if you don't even know who you're worshiping? Your testification is then problematic in the sense that you don't really know what you're saying. You're just saying, you're not really testifying. All right? So this is as important. That's why the ilm of aqaid is extremely important, and it's more important than the ilm of ahkam and the akhlaq by definition. Sure, Islam wants you to have value system, wants you to know your fiqh, but all that stuff doesn't mean anything if you don't understand your aqaid well. Right? All right, so don't worry about the way we shifted things in the past couple of 100 years, where we make value, let's say, on people who memorize the Quran rather than people who internalize the Quran. Makes no difference. What people shift doesn't mean what is right, doesn't reflect the truth. Do we understand each other? That's for jobs in the dunya and positions in the dunya, but not in the akhirah. The akhirah has a different scale, and we're trying to learn about the akhirah, not about the mizan or the scales of the people in the dunya. People in the dunya have their own scales. Right, wrong, whatever. Sometimes they are right, sometimes they're wrong, sometimes whatever. But here we're trying to do what the Prophet ﷺ did. If you remember, the Prophet ﷺ announced his message at age what? I can't hear you. You can speak, it's okay. So he was 40 years old. When did he pass away, ﷺ? 63. So that's how many years total in Dawa? All right, so there we go. Let's do this. 23 years in Dawa. The 23 years, he stayed 13 years in Mecca, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and 10 years in Medina. And I really need you to know this, because if you're studying with me, I'm going to draw it a lot of times. Mecca is 13 years, Medina is 10 years out of the 23. So he, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, stayed in Mecca much longer than he stayed in Medina, correct? Very nice. Okay. When was Salah made obligatory? When was Salah made obligatory? When was Salah made obligatory? Tell me. Come on, somebody needs to know. Huh? When was Mi'raj? No, I don't want people who have been exposed. So don't make yourself know in front of others who don't know, just because you've seen it 15 million times. Give others a chance. It's not fair. Yes. When was Isra wal Mi'raj? In Mecca or in the Meccan phase or the Medina phase? I can't hear you. Meccan phase. When? The beginning, middle, or end? Huh? You haven't taken Sirah, obviously, and you haven't taken it in the, okay, you haven't taken it here, but you haven't taken it at the masjid? Right, towards the end of the Meccan phase, basically either a year or two before the prophetic migration. So I put this line here. This line here is for what? For Hijrah. Hijrah means what? Migration. So just a year almost or so before the Prophet ﷺ did migration to Medina, that's when Salah became obligatory. How about Zakah? Who knows when Zakah became obligatory? You can raise your hand if you know. Not you, Aisha. All right, second year of Hijrah. Second year of Hijrah. What I'm trying to say here is, just so we pay attention, this point here is the beginning of our Hijri date. This point here is the beginning of our Hijri calendar. Today we are in what year Hijri? 14 what? 1440. And that means what? It was starting from here on, and we are now in 1440. That means it was what? It is 1430 years, you minus 10 out. It's 1340 years after the prophetic departure. But it is 1440 from the point of Hijrah. That's what it is. And it's important for us to understand these components. All right, very nice. So Zakah was made obligatory in the second year of Hijrah, or after Hijrah. When was Hajj made? When did the Prophet ﷺ do Hajj? What year? Who knows? Huh? Who knows? How many times did the Prophet ﷺ do Hajj? Once. Okay, that's a good beginning now. When was that? In Mecca or Medina? Medina. When? Towards the beginning, middle, or end? End? Year 10th of Hijrah. So almost a year before the departure of the Prophet ﷺ. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you here? Look, Hajj came here, Zakah here, Salah here. What was the Prophet ﷺ doing from the beginning of Dawa almost up until the end of the Meccan phase? If there was no Salah made obligatory, no Zakah, no Hajj was made, what was Dawa for almost 13 years? Huh? What is the message? This is Islam. Aqeedah, ahkam, and akhlaq. What was he sallallahu alaihi wasallam then doing in those 13 years? What was he talking about? Huh? If ahkam came that late, if the rulings came late, what was he doing then as far as when he says spreading the deen? I don't understand what you mean. What is deen anyway? What is deen? What is the deen again? Go ahead, tell me the three things. Aqeedah, ahkam. What is ahkam? Rulings. So rulings came late. So then what was he teaching sallallahu alaihi wasallam for more than 10 years then? If rulings came late, what was he teaching of the deen? And what else? Value system. Do we understand each other? That's very important to understand. So you see, it doesn't mean that they were not practicing anything, they were, but these things were not made obligatory. What was taking the whole chunk of all these years, day and night? To teach people who Allah Ta'ala is, and then on top of that, teach them value systems. لأنه a human being with no akhlaq is not a human being. A human being with no principles is not a human being. in that sense, meaning is not at the level of a human being. Do we understand each other? A Muslim without akhlaq is not really a Muslim in the sense of the full sense of the word. I don't care how much he memorizes. I don't care if he memorizes the Quran or Bukhari or Muslim with Tirmidhi or Nasa'i or Ibn Majah or Abu Dawud, all of them together. So what? Google memorizes them all too. Of course. A small chip memorizes them all too. That doesn't make them good people, does it? Necessarily not. All right. So do we understand each other? And that's the whole point here that we're talking about. So it's very important for you to understand, first of all, the three compartments. I'm going to come to the three compartments eventually, but I need you to understand where the focus is. Mecca was the focus of Tawheed. Why was it a focus of Tawheed? Yes. Huh? What is shirk? He says it was because there was lots of shirk in Mecca. What is shirk? Huh? I'm sorry, what? Assigning? Huh? Partners. Assigning partners. Good. Associating things with Allah. Shirk is basically worshipping the creation. Shirk is worshipping the creation. Shirk is worshipping the creation. And Aqeedah is about what? Worshipping the Creator, not the creation. That's what we're going to be talking about the whole time here. Shirk is worshipping the creation. You associate the creation with the Creator, making the creation the Creator. Just because you call creation God, does that make the creation God? That's what shirk is. All right. Thank you. Very good. Now, with this, I'm going to move on to the text quickly. We're going to spend most of our time this week, inshallah, talking about the first and the most important. The first and the most important. Just like the Prophet ﷺ stayed 13 years in Mecca teaching his Sahaba Tawheed.
1, 2.
Right? We are also going to spend more time on this. Once you know your basic Aqeedah, Tawheed, Ahkam, ruling comes and falls in naturally. Value system, that's what we call tazkiyah and ihsan. That is a lifelong process of refinement. Value system is a system, or ihsan, akhlaq here, is issue of refinement. Nobody can be refined overnight. Things don't happen that way. Parents take 2 decades basically to try to bring refinement to their children. And sometimes they don't succeed. And even longer than that. Yes. Okay. Good. Jazakallah khairan. You can take that away. Shukran, Shaykh. طيب. So, oops, it's a bit loud. So value system then, or akhlaq, this aspect here, this takes a long time that you work with this. You start with akhlaq or ihsan with your mother and father. They basically start teaching you these things. Usually the mothers and fathers should teach the basics of all that. But mostly because we have become a bit ignorant in aqaid, and also then to a lesser extent in ahkam, meaning we know more ahkam than aqaid in general, unfortunately. So we teach them some rulings. Oh, it's haram to do this, it's okay to do that. Aqaid, we don't know much except very, very grand schemes, and sometimes they're wrong. Akhlaq, that's what also parents teach, usually. Schools teach, mashayikh usually teach, etc., etc., etc. And this is a lifelong process, because refinement doesn't happen overnight. And also it's rizq, in my view. It's a form of rizq. Akhlaq is a form of rizq. Just like ilm in general is a form of rizq. Some people, you can inject them with akhlaq, but they'll never manifest. Rizq. It's just like someone who may have a lot of money, but he lives poor. Not meant to be used for him. He's meant to collect it for his children. He's never meant to use it. But you collect it. And that's exactly what people do with akhlaq. Similar things. I'm just giving you examples so you understand. This is a lifelong thing. This is what we call tazkiyah, ihsan, tasawwuf, if you want to use that innovated name, etc., etc. Aqeedah is creed. All right. With this, I'm going to ask you this. When the Prophet ﷺ came with his deen, did the nations before us have deen? Yes. Did he come to renew ahkam? What was the most focused, or the focus of the Prophet ﷺ? Aqeedah, ahkam, or akhlaq? Huh? Which? Aqeedah or ahkam? Or akhlaq? Did the nations before us have akhlaq? Yes or no? Of course they have value systems. People have value systems until today. Doesn't matter what their faith is. What did the contribution of the Prophet ﷺ then in the matter of akhlaq is? Refine it even more. To refine it even more. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect the standards of values, right? So he contributed here to make it even higher. How about ahkam? Did the Prophet ﷺ come and change some ahkam? But did the people before us, the nations before us, the Christians, the Jews, Yahud, Nasara, other people, did they pray? Did they fast? Did they do pilgrimage? Did they give to charity? So ahkam are more or less the same, aren't they? More or less. The salah is there. How do we do the salah? Okay, these are the details. But what was the most important change? In matters of what? Belief. In matters of creed, in matters of belief. That was the most significant change. How come do people shift? Yeah, people shift. How do they shift? Misinterpretation, misperception, etc., 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 etc. Is that strange to humanity? No, it never is. All right. The question of Aqeedah means, who do I worship? Has been a question, a human question from the beginning. You remember how this evolved? You remember that people used to worship the sun. Some people used to worship moons. People worship stars. Or didn't worship stars. Then people started worshiping animals that they thought were big or strong. Some people worshipped water. Some people worshipped light. They figured light is very good. It brings you, lighting and heat, so that's good. Eventually, the old Egyptians figured they should do a hybrid version between the strongest mind and the strongest body. So they've made a human face to a lion body, and they figured this should be God, right? So a lion is the strongest animal, allegedly, so they've made that, and they've put to the lion a human face, because a human has more vicious mind than all animals. This way, they figured this combination qualifies for someone to be God, because it's strong, and that's why you see that, for example, on the pyramids, right? That kind of combination. So people always went about who is to be worshipped, and that's why Allah Ta'ala sent the messengers. The scholars of Islam, they actually say, some of them say, the Hanafis say, that sound intellect itself ought to lead you to a creator, that nothing else is like him, without any messengers. Most of the scholars of Islam, they say, well, Allah Ta'ala, while that may be true, but Allah Ta'ala does not account you without a messenger. If He doesn't send a messenger to you, then you're not accountable. And since He did, that's how you're accountable. And that's why we say, Muhammadun, let me write it down the way it is written on the Prophet ﷺ's ring, at least in that sequence, Muhammadun Rasulullah. Right? Muhammadun Rasulullah. Muhammad is Rasul. And Rasul of who? Rasul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Muhammad is the one who's guiding you to Allah. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is taking you to the who. to Allah. He's leading you to the question of aqaid. Who do I worship? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is taking you to the question of who. The question of how to worship is never as important as the question of who do I worship. All right, very good. With this, let me move now to the text of Imam At-Tahawi himself real quick. Imam At-Tahawi, just so I can give you a brief intro to him, he died 321 of Hijrah. What does that mean? How many years after the prophetic departure? 311. Remember again, this thing should be part of your thing if you're studying here with us. This is the first phase, 13 years in Mecca. This is the next phase, 10 years. And this is Medina. This is the point of Hijrah right here. So Imam At-Tahawi died about year 321 of Hijrah. He was from a place or from a village called Taha. Taha, not Taha, Taha. Taha, basically. Taha. And that's a village in southern Egypt, in the desert in southern Egypt. 4 or 5 hours, maybe even more than that, south of Cairo. I've had the pleasure and the honor to go and visit him in his graveyard in that village. All right? Imam At-Tahawi died in Egypt, year 321. He is called Tahawi because he comes from Taha, and that means Taha. Then he is Tahawi from the village of Taha. Imam Tahawi was a couple of things. First was faqih. Faqih means what? Faqih means a scholar of what? A scholar of what? When I say someone is faqih, a scholar of fiqh. Scholar of fiqh. Fiqh. What is fiqh? What is fiqh? Fiqh. What is fiqh? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? What is fiqh? Ahkam. Ahkam. Fiqh is what you should do. All right? Imam At-Tahawi was faqih by definition. And faqih means he knows the ahkam of the madhab, of the whole school of thought. Right? Now, I just want to sort of give you a quick intro to al-ulum al-Islamiyya. When we say Islamic studies, what do we mean? What are Islamic studies? Al-ulum al-Islamiyya, or Islamic studies. What do you mean? What is Islamic studies? What are Islamic studies? We have 4 essential and 3 complementary or supplementary or complementary, whichever you like. 4 essential ulum. 4 essential ulum. First, ulum al-Quran al-Kareem. 2, ulum al-Sunnah al-Sharifa. 3, ulum al-Fiqh. 4, let me write that down differently. علوم العقيدة. 4, علوم الفقه. So first is علوم القرآن الكريم, then the علوم of the Sunnah, then علوم of the Aqidah, and then علوم الفقه. Those are the 4 essential. طبعا obviously you understand that every single compartment has lots of علوم under it, subsets of sciences. علوم القرآن الكريم, we go from علوم القراءة, we go to علوم, let's say, الأسباب, we go علوم التفسير, we go all kinds of nasakh, there are all kinds of subsets of علوم, right? Sunnah Sharifa also has different subsets in it, such as علوم السيرة والشمائل, علم الحديث, etc., etc. علم الحديث Sharif, all that under Sunnah. Al-Aqeedah, obviously, Islamic or creed, and creed means, all right, so what is our creed versus other creed, Islamic sects, etc., etc. And علوم الفقه is how to worship. Those are considered essential sciences. Essential sciences. You have to know them if you're a scholar on a basic level, knowing them on a basic level. What are the supplemental sciences? Well, the supplemental sciences are three. One, علم الأصول, which is the science of legal theory. Science of legal theory. What do you mean legal theory? Okay, so for example, you ask me, is doing a niyyah, is having a niyyah before, at the time the first drop of water touches your forehead, at that point, bringing a niyyah in your heart of wudu, is it obligatory in the Shafi'i versus the Hanafi? I say it is. What if you don't make that niyyah? Then your wudu is not right. So what did I tell you now? I told you what? I told you that you have to have a niyyah. You asked me right at the second where the drop of water touches your forehead. Not before, not after. Right? If you're a Shafi'i. Well, that's a fiqh. Usul fiqh is, how did I come to that conclusion? What's the legal theory behind it? What's the scientific methodology behind it? Right? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the usul of that is the prophetic hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Deeds are judged by intentions. You want to make wudu, well, it's judged or hinges on your niyyah. The beginning of wudu is when the water touches the face. Hence, your niyyah must start exactly at that point. That's my legal theory. That's ilm al-usul. We're going to study that, but I'm just trying to introduce you to the difference between fiqh and usul al-fiqh. Are we on the same page? If you don't understand, you need to raise your hand and question me. All right. We have another ilm in the supplemental or complemental. It's called ilm al-lugha al-arabiyya, the Arabic language. Now, is it important to know the Arabic language to be a Muslim? No. To be a good Muslim? No. Is it important? Can you be a good Muslim being Russian? Yes. Is it important to know the Arabic language if you want to be a scholar? Of course. Do we understand each other? Very nice. Why? Well, because the two usul or the two foundations we have are all in the Arabic language. Al-Quran al-Kareem is in the Arabic language. As-Sunnah Sharifa is in the Arabic language. Without knowing the Arabic language, you will not know the ways that Allah Ta'ala revealed the Quran in as far as the linguistic aspect is concerned. Now, when I say knowing the Arabic language, I don't mean being a native speaker of the Arabic language or the ability to converse for non-Arabs in Arabic. Absolutely not. That's not what I mean. I mean by knowing the Arabic language, knowing its absolute knowledge, which is ulum al-bayan. So every single one of these things have different subsets behind them, right? Al-bayan, right? طبعا علوم البلاغة, al-badi'. So we have different sets, علوم البيان, علوم البلاغة, علوم البديع, etc., etc. Right? All these things that we know them. This way we have understanding of the Arabic language, the sentence construct, why, where, and which is more eloquent. There is difference. It's not simply the ability to read or understand, let alone to converse in the language. It's just a science like any other science. Do we understand that? Okay. We have also another set of ilm here, is at-tarikh was-siyar. So, history, Muslim history or history. I don't like to say Islamic history, I like to say Muslim history. Because Islamic becomes a bit problematic. Then I'm conferring Islam on history versus Muslim history. There's good, there's not so good sometimes. Muslims are human beings, right? So we know our history and biographies. Now all these 7 different disciplines constitute what we call Islamic studies in general. Islamic studies in general. These subsets of sciences, all right, or these disciplines. And every discipline has multiple subsets. I mean, some of them have 10, 20 subsets of different specializations where people specialize all their life in just one. Do we understand each other? All right, and that's important. Why? Because sometimes we belittle things, you know, because we think that we can just go to study for 5 years and that makes us, or 10 years and makes us scholars, right? So if I was to tell you, somebody has a PhD, what's your next question almost immediately? Huh? In what? I tell you in everything. How about that? You start laughing at me? That's exactly what I do when someone tells me I know all the sciences. Do we understand each other? Somebody tells me I know. Sure you do. You don't know anything. That's what it means. Nobody knows says I know. And nobody knows all of them on a scholarly level. I have not met anyone in my life who knows all these sciences on a scholarly level entirely, meaning on beyond the scholarly level. So what do? So we have students of knowledge, right? And students, PhD is probably a beginning level of students of knowledge. I'm not trying to make it beyond the scene. I'm telling you exactly the reality because I see some people are having grins on their mouth. They think I'm just joking. I'm not joking. A PhD is about what? 4 years bachelor, 2 years master, another 3, 4 years. So about 10 years. Yeah. You're just getting your feet wet. You're a student. I'm not calling you a scholar just because you have a PhD. You're not a scholar yet. Right? I used to be in hiring committees for the University of Georgia. Somebody comes with a PhD. I don't consider him a scholar. What's your research in, son? What did you do? What's your post-PhD research in? I mean, what did you do? Which science did you actually specialize in? And what's your subspecialty in that? And what's your research? And once you do that, you hire them as instructor first, maybe. Then assistant professor, associate professor, right? Etc., etc. You don't hire, they're not professors yet. They're not scholars yet. It takes them years of work to become a professor. Doesn't it, Maulana Asghar, who's doing, mashallah, a wonderful job, but except he's not doing it full-time yet. So I'm hoping that he does sometime soon. Because it doesn't work. You can't love 2 people at the same time in 2 different hearts. ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه. A committed student at this level becomes a scholar, sure. Right? A student eventually, that person who became a teacher at the university eventually becomes a professor after many years of what? Research, active research in the same subject becomes a scholar. You can say so-and-so now as a scholar of this, in this discipline. Are we on the same page? After scholarship, you go to mastery. So-and-so is a master in this issue. You go an expert, maybe, and then you go to authority. And that's in one discipline versus others. Do we understand each other here? I have not met anyone who is an authority in any of these things, except maybe partial in my life, in the whole world. And there may be some people, but I don't know them. Authorities, I'm speaking like Abu Hanifa, Al-Shafi'i, Al-Bukhari, Muslim, people like that, people of that caliber. Do we have people on this level, scholarly level? Yes. Not many. Not many. Do we have people on this level? Yeah, more. Where are we? Right here. Yeah, we're wannabe students. Right? We want to be at this level. Some of us want to, some of us don't even want to be. All right. Just so we understand, so we don't also belittle and we take our things less than what they really are, right? When someone says, I'm a scholar, the first thing I ask, you are here already at this level? Must be what took you 10 years to get this level, let's say, equivalent of that, and maybe another, maybe 10 to get from this level to this level. In the same field, what are you a scholar in? And what have you contributed to scholarship that was not there? Or articulated in scholarship that was not articulated before? Because scholarship doesn't mean the regurgitation of memorized information. Scholarship means understanding the scholarship and specializing in one thing where you've added to scholarship or articulated in a way that was not done before. Do we understand each other? Very important. Okay. With this, Al-Imam At-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala was a faqih. Faqih means a scholar in fiqh. And so he was a scholar in one discipline. You can actually argue that he was a master in it. Not an authority, but between scholarship and mastery, probably closer to mastery, rahimahullah. But he was not only that. He was also a hafiz. Hafiz means what? Huh? Huh? No. A title of hafiz, when you say someone is hafiz, what do you mean in academia? When you say someone is al-hafiz, what do we mean in academia, in Islamic circles? What do we mean by that? Someone is hafiz, what do we say? What does that mean? Huh? Of what? Whatever? No. That's the answer to that is whatever. Memorizer of the prophetic hadith. We mean by that prophetic hadith mastership. Someone who is at a mastership level here in the science of the al-hadith sharif, the prophetic hadith, is then called hafiz or al-imam al-hafiz or al-hafiz. Well, Imam al-Tahawi was hafiz in hadith. That's a big level. And the strange or the interesting thing is that he's combining mastery in two disciplines, which is not very usual for human beings. You either have to be, that claim of having interdisciplinary mastership is either an insane claim or someone who's extremely genius. And this man was like that. So he was faqih and he was a hafiz in the sciences of hadith. But he also did what? He also wrote texts in Aqeedah, or a text in Aqeedah. So he adds now scholarship in another level or another discipline. So we have some scholar here that we're looking at. His text is interdisciplinary, and he died 321 of Hijrah. That's early. Remember the hadith that speaks about the first century? The best people are in the first century, and those who follow them, and those who follow them. You've heard that hadith before? Well, he's in that 3 centuries, first 3 centuries. So that gives him an extra sort of presence because of his scholarship and where he was. Today, we are 1440. He was 321. Now, he wrote a text called, or a text in Aqeedah. We called it Al-Aqeedah At-Tahawiyah. He didn't call it that way. It's just a text of Aqeedah he wrote. But what's interesting about the text of Aqeedah that he wrote is what As-Subki and other scholars that came after him said. And they said that the text of At-Tahawi is agreed upon by all Sunni Muslims or by Muslims of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah everywhere with no disagreement. The beauty of the text of Imam Tahawi is this. It is the first text in Aqeedah ever written by a scholar of Islam that is authenticated to him, that's agreed upon by all. Let me say it again. The beauty of this is that the text of Imam Tahawi is the first authentic Aqeedah text ever written by a scholar that's agreed upon its authenticity and agreed upon its content, both. What's the first text in Aqeedah ever? Huh? What's the first text in Aqeedah? He says Al-Fiqh al-Akbar. What's the first text in Aqeedah? Huh? Al-Quran al-Kareem. Al-Quran al-Kareem is the first text in Aqeedah and the most important text in Aqeedah. What's the most important text in fiqh? I can't hear you. What's the first important text in fiqh? I still can't hear. What's the first important text in fiqh? Al-Quran al-Kareem. What's the first important text in seerah? Al-Quran al-Kareem. What's the first important text in akhlaq? What's the first text in ahkam? What's the first text in aqaid? I'm not talking about that because Al-Quran is from Allah. I'm talking about a human written text. The first text that's authentic is Al-Imam Tahawi's text, though he died 321. So we're about, 1,200 years away from him or so, 11 some hundred years. So we're looking at a text that's about 1,200 years old. But I need to also, because he mentioned Al-Fiqh al-Akbar. Al-Fiqh al-Akbar is written by Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And Abu Hanifa, obviously, as you all know, is older than Imam al-Tahawi. Imam Abu Hanifa died about year 150 of Hijrah. So almost half. But why aren't we going to Al-Fiqh al-Akbar first? We're going to Al-Tahawi text. Because Al-Tahawi text is agreed upon its authenticity by all to Al-Imam al-Tahawi himself. And it's agreed upon its content. Al-Fiqh al-Akbar is contested as far as authenticity to Abu Hanifa. The Hanafis say it is authentic to Imam Abu Hanifa. Non-Hanafis say it's not authentic to Abu Hanifa. So it's not agreed upon. At-Tahawiyah is agreed upon. Do we understand each other? In the back there, I can't see you. Are we on the same page? Okay, good, because I need to hear something. Okay, good. With this, let's go to the text. Let's go to the text. So now, Al-Imam al-Tahawi himself, who's a scholar in hadith, a scholar in fiqh, is writing also about the aqaid, and he's a scholar that has dignity as far as, and credibility as far as his scholarship, And he, rahimahullah ta'ala, by the way, Imam Tahawi was a Shafi'i faqih first, and then he switched his madhab to becoming a Hanafi faqih. Right? Okay. So he starts saying, he wrote his text, and again, like I said, this text is important. For those of you who are taking the course with us, I need you to memorize chunks of it in Arabic and also in English, meaning the meanings in English. And we'll go through there, inshallah ta'ala. So, we'll go straight through, inshallah, with the text. Imam Tahawi says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين قال العلامة حجة الإسلام أبو جعفر الوراق الطحاوي. So his name is Ahmad bin Salama. That's his name. Abu Ja'far. Abu Ja'far means the father of Ja'far. Right? Abu means father of. So his name is Ahmad Abu Ja'far At-Tahawi بمصر. Misr means Egypt. You have the text in front of you. Rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, هذا ذكر بيان عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة. This is the announcement of the Aqeedah. عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة. That's what he said. He says this is the announcement of the Aqeedah of Al-Sunnah. What do we say Aqeedah mean? What does Aqeedah mean? Huh? Creed. The word Aqeedah is an innovated word. An innovated word, meaning it is not a word in the book, nor is it a word in the Sunnah. We don't have any word in the book, in the Quran, that says Aqeedah. We don't have any word in the Sunnah that says Aqeedah. Why did we use it? I don't know. Where does it come from? It comes from Aqeedah. Meaning what? To tie a knot. What do you mean? Well, what they wanted to say is, what we're going to talk about in the Aqeedah, you ought to tie your heart like a knot on. Firm. You tie your heart firm on it. That's why they call it Aqeedah. Do we understand each other? What is the word then used in the Quran and the Sunnah? Iman. So if you want to be more Salafi, you can use Imaniyat or Masailul Iman. Issues of Iman. Right? Aqeedah means, but the word Aqeedah was used by the Salaf, so we're using it in the sense of Masailul Iman. There's no La Mushahata fil Istilah. Aqeedah comes from the term is, and that's why, for example, they have a necklace in the Arabic language that women have is called Aqd. Why? Because they used to, it's like knots tied, right? Knot after knot after knot. And that's why it's Aqd. It's all tied knots, right? And that's why we say Aqd, right? Aqd, nikah, for example, right? Uqud, these are uqud. What do you mean aqd nikah? You tie the knot. Do we understand each other? So that's where this word comes from. What do you mean ahl? Ahl means what? Ahl means what? Huh? People of. People of. Ahl means people of. People of. In a special level may mean household, but household and people of is the same thing. People of. Who are these people? Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Right? Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Very nice. What does the word Sunnah mean? What does the word Sunnah mean? Tell me. Speak up loud, especially in the back there. Huh? What does the word Sunnah mean? Tomorrow, make space for me so I can go through. Right? Don't block this like that. So make space so I can go through and see these people in the back who are playing. If you're here to play, it's going to be sad times on a test, especially if you're a student. What does the word sunnah mean? Yes, ma'am. Saying and actions of the Prophet ﷺ. Who agrees, who disagrees? Who agrees with her? Raise your hand. Who disagrees with her? Yeah, in the back there, tell me. What's the sunnah? Yes. Huh? Okay. What's the sunnah according in Islamic studies? When we define the sunnah, how do we define the sunnah? Right. Sunnah is that prophetic, number one must be prophetic. What the prophetic sayings, prophetic actions, and prophetic tacit approvals or approvals. These things constitute sunnah. When we say the sunnah now, I want you to understand the sunnah is the Prophet ﷺ saying, Prophet ﷺ's actions, and the Prophet ﷺ's approvals. Sunnah is what he ﷺ said, what he ﷺ did, and what he ﷺ what? I can't hear you in the back. Approved. Give me an example of the sunnah of actions. What's an example of sunnah of actions? What the Prophet ﷺ did? Huh? Smiling. Did the Prophet ﷺ smile? That's a sunnah of actions, right? A sunnah of tacit approvals. So tacit approval must be different than actions or sayings, correct? All right, so what is tacit approval? Such as what? Such as things that happened in the Prophet ﷺ's presence, or not presence, in his knowledge. He was informed about it. He didn't say anything, he didn't do anything, but he never objected on that which was said. Something happened in front of him, or he knew about it. He didn't say a word, he didn't do anything, but he approved. That's called sunnah. Why? Well, had it been objectionable, was he obliged to object? Yes. Since he did not object, and it was in his presence, then it is his sunnah. For example, the hadith that's sahih, a man comes and says that the Prophet ﷺ said that three things will interrupt the salah. A dog, a donkey, and women. If these things pass in front of you, your salah will be interrupted. As Sayyida Aisha heard the hadith, and in an authentic refutation, she said, "How dare you compare us to donkeys? I used to be laying down in front of the Prophet ﷺ while he's praying, and I was between him and the Qibla. And when I want to do something in the house, I would just go in front of him, around him, and then come back and lie down where I was, and he would be continuing his salah." Did the Prophet ﷺ say anything to her? Did he say, "This is how you do it"? Did he do it? He tacitly approved. That means what? That's also his sunnah. Do we understand that? So the prophetic sunnah is three things. They are what? Come, quick. Sayings, actions, approvals. Once you hear these things, this is the usuli definition of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So when we say we are the people of Ahlus Sunnah, means the people who are what? Yeah, well, directly it means the people of the sayings, actions, and tacit approvals of the Prophet ﷺ. What are we trying to say? We are the people who prioritize the sunnah, which is the saying, the prophetic sayings, the prophetic actions, and the prophetic approvals. Are we on the same page? And jama'ah means the group. Jama'ah means the group. What we mean by that is the group of haqq. Obviously, we believe we are the people who follow the prophetic sunnah, and if you follow the prophetic sunnah, this jama'ah must be better than another jama'ah who's following maybe other than the prophetic sunnah. Does that make sense? So if you have two jama'ah, jama'atul sunnah, this jama'ah is obviously more righteous, at least in its admittance of or admission of following the prophetic sunnah rather than following X, Y, and Z. Are we on the same page? All right, very good. So he says, Imam At-Tahawi says, هذا ذكر بيان عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة. This announces the declaration of the Aqidah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Let's see. How much time do we have? It's 12. 30 minutes. Okay. Why don't you take a 5-minute recess and then we'll continue, inshallah. Just stretch in your place, or you want to move, move. without Arabic. Yalla, bismillah. 5 minutes is over. It's okay, it's okay. It's okay, so I got it. طيب أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So a question came during the break which is important to address. He says Ahlus Sunnah are those who claim to follow what? This Jama'ah claims to follow what? Sunnah means what? They claim to follow the prophetic what? Sayings, prophetic actions, and prophetic what? Prophetic approvals, right? So he says then, what do you call other, this is Jama'atu Ahli Sunnah. What do you call other Jama'ah who still proclaim Islam? We call them Ahlul Bid'ah, the people of innovation. We call, just like we call these people Ahlul Sunnah, the people of prophetic Sunnah, we call the others Ahlul Bid'ah. Does that mean they're not Muslims? Not necessarily. Bid'ah could be something that takes people out of Islam, or could be something that's innovated within Islam, but not prophetic. Why are we saying innovated? We're saying what? It's not prophetic. That's what we're saying from our perspective. Does that make sense to you? All right, is that slandering of others? No. We're trying to say, in our view, in our academic view, we are holding ourselves to the bar of the Sunnah. And we see you deviating from the Sunnah, so we call it as we see it. And we don't mean the practices of the individuals here. What we mean is the scientific methodology. Do we understand each other? I don't mean Ahlul Sunnah, yani means any person who's Ahlul Sunnah is actually following the Sunnah. Because a lot of them follow more bid'ah than Sunnah, nowadays anyway. What do I mean? I mean the scientific methodology. The basis upon the understanding of this group is based on the Quran and the Sunnah, rather than anything else. Does that make sense? All right. With this, I need to go back in history real quick to explain a few things. I don't know if we can do that now, or maybe I can delay it till when we have more time. Probably that's better. If you remember, I told you Deen has 3 compartments, correct? And they are what? What's the first one? Aqeedah, Ahkam, Akhlaq. If you understand that, you know that well. When it comes to Aqeedah, matters of Aqeedah, Muslims insist on this. Number 1, matters of belief must be straight from the Quran. Right? Al-Quran al-Kareem. And the second thing is, the second source is the prophetic Sunnah. Now, when I say the Quran, I also mean the Quran that was revealed on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam in the Arabic language, that's understood through the Arabic language rules and ulum, al-balagha, eloquence, badi', bayan, etc., etc. I don't mean applying Russian grammar to the Arabic language. It doesn't work. I don't mind the Russian language. But there's a problem if you apply that to the Arabic language. There's a problem if you apply Armenian language to grammar to the Arabic language. We understand the Arabic language through the means of the Arabic language itself, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran mentioned it, and how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then explained it. Aqeedah comes from 2 sources, only Al-Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi wasallam. Now, I need to take you to a bit, an usuli concept here is the issue of thubut and dilala. Thubut and dilala. Thubut and dilala. Thubut and dilala. Thubut means the existence of a text. Dilala means what the text is pointing to, or the content, or implying. What the text is implying, what the text is trying to tell you. All right, real quick here. When we say the Quran existence is definitive. Definitive, all right, here, let me write that down. A thubut existence could be either definitive or non-definitive. This in Arabic language means qat'i or غير قطعي. الدلالة means محكم غير محكم أو متشابه. يعني unambiguous, ambiguous. This is very important. I need you to know it. I'm going to test you on it as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Drinking standing is in Sahih al-Bukhari, right? Aywa. This is for the new ones. Those who know me, they already know. طيب. So, when I look at a text, I look at a text from 2 points. Either from a point of existence, does this text exist? Is it there? And then also, what is this text saying? Is the content of the text ambiguous or unambiguous? Is this text exist definitively or non-definitively? Are we on the same page? All right, let me ask you this. When I say the text of the Quran, does the text of the Quran exist? Does it exist in a definitive or non-definitive way? I know you're saying that, which is good. Why definitive? Because the transmission, the mode of transmission. The mode of transmission is definitive. How so? If this was a Nabi, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and then in the first layer he told many Sahabas, right? Hundreds of Sahaba this Quran. Those Sahaba, in turn, they told the next layer, the Tabi'een, much more of them. And those told even more people after them. And then even more after that. So we say then, a definitive text is a text that was transmitted to us through mass transmissions. A definitive text is transmitted through mass transmissions, mass transmitters in every layer. Mass transmitters in every layer. So many that it is rationally, logically impossible for them to conspire to make a mistake, or to conspire to misunderstand, or to conspire to lie. It's not possible. The Prophet ﷺ gave the Quran to so many Sahaba in so many different places. They told other people, they told other people, all in every layer of transmission until it reached us. It was mass transmitted. And the mass transmission ensures definitive transmission. Why? Because if I was to do this here, let me do it this way now, instead of here. Let me do An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Here, let me write it in a different one. An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam allegedly told one person, who told one person, who told one person, who told one person. And then we got it here. This mode of transmission versus this mode of transmission. This mode of transmission we call definitive. This mode of transmission we call non-definitive. This is very important. This mode of transmission is non-definitive. Why? Why is it non-definitive? Yes. It's one person. Did we, in transmissions, in order for us to deem anything authentic, and I need you to know that, and I need you to understand that, and you'll be tested on that. Two things matter. One, sidq. Two, dabt. Sidq means verifiable, truthfulness. Dabt means verifiable accuracy in transmission. Sidq means verifiable truthfulness. Dabt means verifiable accuracy of transmission. What do you mean verifiable truthfulness? Well, if I am, all right, so I have here, let me identify the narrators. All right, so I have, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, obviously he's a prophet, he told the Sahabi, all right, and he told the Tabi'i, and the Tabi'i told the Tabi'i, and the Tabi'i told the Tabi'i. So we go now to these people here. We have to verify sidq, verifiable truthfulness. We have to verify accuracy in transmission. If I verify both of them, then I put two checks. Let me verify this guy. Does he have truthfulness that's verifiable? He does. How about his accuracy in transmission? He does. Then I do the same. What does that mean? What do you mean I verify truthfulness of somebody? How can you verify people's truthfulness? Well, first of all, they're not known to be liars. Known. Not someone claiming. Known. Because usually these things are patterns, right? People who lie just lie. Unfortunately. Okay, so you know. All right, you identify that. Number two, dabt. Dabt means what? So is that enough? No, nobody says he's a liar. Is that enough? No. What do? I take all his narrations. This narrator that I'm questioning, how many ahadith did he narrate? 50, 60? I take them all. And then I have a comparative analysis study with established narrators. And I compare him to the established narrators to see if he matches. Is he lying? Is he changing? Do we understand each other? Yes. The established, how do I verify the established narrators? Established narrators are verified through the same process. For example, it goes up. Instead of here, it goes to here, it goes to here. Right? So I have the Sahabi saying, and it's known that this Sahabi said, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever lies and attributes it to me, then he receives his seat in Jahannam, wal-'iyadhu billah ta'ala. It is beyond known that the Prophet ﷺ said that. So I have something that's established, that's there. And anyone who narrated those, if he checks out with the reputation, then he checks out also with narration. Right? That he's consistent. Okay. So I take those small consistent pool, and I take now the inconsistent pool, and I try to show that this new guy that's in question, is he good? Is he consistent or is he inconsistent? Is he consistent or is he inconsistent? Dabt is accuracy in transmission, which means what? He delivers what he hears. You know how some people add sugar, spice, and everything not nice to a story. I have to check this narrator. Does he deliver the narration exactly, or does he chip away, adds or subtracts from it? Once he adds or subtracts, I say his dabt, his accuracy, is not intact, and therefore he doesn't receive a check here, and therefore his hadith is da'if or inauthentic. In order for me to authenticate this chain, every single one of them must have a check in verifiable truthfulness and verifiable accuracy. How do I verify accuracy? Also through comparative analysis. I put all his narration against an established narration. And I try to see what? I try to see if he adds anything or he subtracts anything. If he does, then I know he's not accurate in transmission. He may be a truthful person, but not accurate in transmission. There are people who are truthful but not accurate. Are we on the same page? If I verify that, I say now, I come and say, hey, this chain is authentic. Sahih. This chain is authentic. Are we on the same page? Yet it's non-definitive. It's non-definitive. It is authentic, but non-definitive. You think I'm going to ask you these things on the test? Of course I will. Right? It is authentic, but non-definitive. Versus this one here, this mode of transmission, it is definitive. Why? Well, because our argument is this. Hey, you did verify the accuracy and truthfulness of every narration. But this is only one single narrator. There's no 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 like the others. Even this person who has verifiable truthfulness and verifiable accuracy, is he a human being? Is he subject to misunderstanding? Is he subject to misperception, making mistakes, forgetfulness, lapses? Is he subject to all that? Because there's a mere point of being subject to lapses, to forgetfulness, to misunderstanding as a human being, despite this high fidelity process of having verifiable truthfulness and verifiable accuracy, we say this chain is authentic. It's a high fidelity process of authentication, yet it is non-definitive simply because the mere possibility that exists that he may forget or misunderstand. Versus in this case, it's not possible that all of them forget or make the same lapse. It's not possible that all of them actually misunderstand, because they all have verifiable accuracy and verifiable truthfulness. If one forgets, the other is not possible for all others to forget. Do we understand the difference? This is very important for you to understand. We call this, to further make this even more complicated, we call another nomenclature. We call this mode of transmission here mutawatir. Mutawatir, which means definitively transmitted to the Prophet from the Prophet ﷺ. Definitive. Mutawatir means mass transmission. Mass transmissions. Here we call it ahad. Single narrator chain. Single narrator chain. Non-definitive. Definitive, non-definitive. Now, the second thing we ask about after saying, is this text that you're saying the Prophet ﷺ said, is it definitive or non-definitive? We come to the dilala, which means what? Well, what is this hadith saying? Is it saying something unambiguous, or is it saying something ambiguous? Meaning what? Is it saying something that like this? Whoever believes in Allah on the Day of Judgment shall honor their neighbor. فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ. Should honor their guest. Right? Is this ambiguous? Is it telling you, we don't know what it's saying. Maybe honor, maybe not honor. Is it telling you straightforward? All right. Now I tell you another hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, for example, telling the Sahaba, you should pray Asr in Bani Qurayza, in a different, in so-and-so place. Some people understood it to be right away, to mean speed up and pray. Even if you pray here, speed up and pray. But some people understood it that they can delay their prayer and they should not pray it until they get there. There's ambiguity in the text. Do we understand each other? These things are extremely important. The text that's thabit or that exists, either exists in a qat'i, definitive way, or exists in a non-qat'i, non-definitive way. But the text itself, the meaning of the text, the content of the text, may be muhkam, which means unambiguous, or mutashabih, which means ambiguous. I need you to know the terms in Arabic, not just in English. The students of knowledge. The students. You need to know what muhkam versus mutashabih is. You need to know what qat'i versus ghair qat'i is. Questions about this? This is important for you to understand. If you didn't understand, you can ask now. Yes. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in the next session. Questions so far about this? The issues here that we're talking about. The issues of thubut, being either definitive or non-definitive, and the issue of dilala, being muhkam or mutashabih. You have to know this. You have to understand this. Otherwise, things will not make sense to you. Questions in the back about this? Yes. All right. If I have a text that somebody says the Prophet ﷺ said, first is I asked about the existence of this text. Does the text exist? You say yes. I say how? You say it is narrated by 70 Sahabas who told 700 tabi'een, who told 7,000 tabi'een, who told 7 million tabi'een. Up until now. And every single one of them has verifiable truthfulness and accuracy. It is narrated in a mutawatir, definitive way. It's mass transmitted in such a way that it is logically impossible for any one of them to make a mistake. Because if he did, the other one would remind him. It's not possible. Or you say, the text is narrated through a single chain, ahad hadith, but it's authentic because they're all verifiable. They've got verifiable truthfulness and verifiable accuracy. But it's a single chain. It's non-definitive in its transmission. But it's authentic. I don't want you to equate. Do not ever equate non-definitive to weak. Non-definitive and weak are not the same thing. Non-definitive means authentic here, but it's not mass transmitted. That's all I'm saying. Because if it was weak, then this guy here, for example, would not have the 2 checks. Would have only one. And if he has one, I say, you know what? This hadith now is da'if. Sorry. Why? Well, this narrator here, his accuracy is proven to be fallible, flawed. It's not perfect. All right. Are we on the same page? Now we come to dilala. Now, whether we've established the text to be definitive or non-definitive, we come to say, is the text muhkam, means unambiguous, or is the text mutashabih, ambiguous? What do I mean by muhkam? It accepts only one possible meaning. There's no other way. It's not subject to interpretations. Mutashabih means it accepts multiple meanings. It could mean this, it could mean that. It accepts multiple interpretations. Muhkam means it accepts only one possible meaning. Mutashabih means it accepts multiple meanings. Are we on the same page? I know this is going, we're supposed to be going a little beyond the surface. This is going beyond the surface, but this is very important, foundation. Having said that, any question about this so far? So let me ask you this. So in the back, when we have a text, what do we first try to prove? It's what? Its existence. And how can a text exist? In which way? Through transmission. Transmission is two kinds. What kind? Mass transmissions and single chain. Which one gives you assurance of definitive transmission? The mass or the single? Mass. That's called qat'i in the Arabic language, right? Or mutawatir. You need to know the text and the words in the Arabic language. And that's how you start building your vocab in the terminology, right? Mutawatir or qat'i. The second mean, I see that the far back, they can't really see the board, right? Can you see the board in the back there? So it's difficult for them. So that's why there has to be a solution for them. So maybe you need to put a screen, Shaykh. No, dua, or you put them close. The students need to be close. Those who are students need to be very close so they can see the board. Because I have no use for you if you're just sitting here to listen. What's the point? I'm going to ask you questions. And you need to know the terms. Maybe something that can project this and put it here, or they have to sit very, very close. The students and the non-students can be in the back. They can be the listeners. Okay. Then we take the text and then we look at the dilala. Dilala means, what is the text saying? Is the text saying something that's unambiguous, or is it saying something that's ambiguous? All right, so now having said that, let me ask you this question. Does the Quran exist? Is the Quran transmitted to us? How is it transmitted to us? In a definitive qat'i way, in a mutawatir way. Are we on the same page? Which means what? It's in this way of transmission. So when it comes to the Quran, I immediately go to what? From one, I go to two. I don't go to negotiate the existence of the Quran. Why? Well, because it's definitively transmitted. I go to negotiate what? What does the Quran mean? If the ayah is, or I go to say, sorry, is this ayah of the Quran muhkam or mutashabih? Is this ayah unambiguous in its meaning, or it accepts multiple meanings? Are we on the same page here? Is this ayah muhkam, or is this ayah mutashabih? Muhkam or? Again. Muhkam. What does muhkam mean? What does the other one mean? What does the ambiguous one mean? Huh? What does it mean in the Arabic language? What's the ambiguous mean in the Arabic language? Mutashabih. Mutashabih. Need you to know that. You need to have that down. All right. So when it comes to the prophetic sunnah, so the Quran, we know the Quran is definitively transmitted because it's transmitted in every layer by mass numbers of transmitters. How about the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is different. Some of the sunnah is qat'i, some of the sunnah is non-definitive. Unlike the Quran, all of the Quran, every letter of the Quran is definitively transmitted. It's qat'i, mutawatir in its transmission. The prophetic sunnah, some of it is definitive in its transmission, some of it is non-definitive in its transmission. Do we understand that? The question of thubut or existence applies to the sunnah really more than the Quran. Why? Because the Quran is mass transmitted, mutawatir in its transmission. The sunnah is non-definitive in its transmission, some of it. And the other part is also like the Quran in that sense. It is definitively transmitted. All right, so with the sunnah, we go to both questions. With the Quran, we go to the second. What is the text implying? Is it muhkam or mutashabih? But with the sunnah, we go to say, is this hadith definitively transmitted or is it non-definitively transmitted? Why am I saying all this? Well, number one, you need it for now and later, but also for now. Why? Because in matters of iman, remember we're talking about issues of iman here? In matters of creed, of belief, where it's Aqeedah, you have to tie the knot on it. Can you believe in something that it's verifiable in truthfulness, in accuracy, and it's authentic, but there may be a chance of human error? Can you put a faith on a possibility of human error? No. And therefore, the ulama of Ahl Sunnah stipulated that matters of Iman must be based on text that's qat'i or mutawatir, on definitive text. When I say definitive text, what am I saying? The what? What's the definitive text? Yeah. What is mutawatir? Yeah. What text is mutawatir? Al-Quran, and then? Is all the Sunnah mutawatir? The mutawatir of the Sunnah. Do we understand each other? The mutawatir of the Sunnah. Again, it's not proving to be effective with those people who are far away, Shaykh. All right. Yeah, there has to be a solution. Khair. When we say that matters of faith must be based on definitive transmissions, we're saying because non-definitive transmissions are still subject to a human error, versus mass transmissions are not, simply because if one forgets, it's not possible that all of them forget. Versus here, you still have that mere possibility. Because of that, the ulama of Al-Sunnah in general went to say that matters of Iman must be based on either on mutawatir text, on definitive text, either Quran or the definitive Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. How about the other authentic Sunnah? Do we not take it? No, we do take it. We admit it. But they say it's inadmissible if it's alone, single-handedly, is the only proof for the issue, and it came through non-definitive chains. Meaning, if something came in a single chain and it's consistent with the mutawatir, that's fine. But if an issue comes with a single chain narration, and that's the only substantiation for it, then it may not be admissible to constitute an issue of faith that you must believe in for salvation. Do we understand each other? Because issues that you must believe in as a matter of Aqeedah, as a matter of faith, must be substantiated in a mode, in a modality that's above any doubt and beyond any suspicion and no possibility of human error. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to test you on that, and this is very important. So why don't you take your lunch break, or what break is it? You figure out. Dhuhr break. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Wa ala alihi.
Jazakumullah khairan jaza. Alhamdulillah, a beautiful start to our program, inshallah, and the dars. So we will be taking a break now from 12:30 to 1:30, which will include, so it will be 12:32 to 1:32, just to be fair. And inshallah, we will have Dhuhr Salah as well included. So if you want to get yourself a quick bite, or you want to freshen up, do so now, and you can all leave at once, inshallah. But be back here by 1:32, and 1:30 till approximately 3:30 will be the next session, inshallah, so that we can maximize this duroos with Sayyidi. We will be finding solutions to some of the challenges, and as Sayyidi said, the students of Madina, please try and make your way to the front until we find some solution to with regards to the board. Right. There's 6 students who can build the akhirah by making some khidmah. Brother Asghar would like some assistance with some matters, inshallah. Sisters, please go upstairs to make your salah, inshallah. Right? But remember, you've got some time before the Dhuhr Adhan, inshallah. So take a break and have something to eat if you need to. We'll all gather here for Dhuhr Salah, and thereafter, immediately after Dhuhr at 1:32, we will start the dars. Shukran jazeelan. Assalamu alaikum.